Chapter 21 Publication Ethics. Shansai Anand Sakrishnan Ed. Abstract. Publication ethics refers to rules and guidelines to be followed and practiced when publishing a research work. This is necessary to maintain professional and academic honesty, which is essential when the information is shared with a larger audience who may incorporate some of the conclusions and recommendations in their practice. The code of conduct for publication was laid down by the Committee on Publication Ethics, founded in 1997 to prevent misconduct in publication. The chapter highlights various types of misconducts associated with publication, which include falsifying and manipulating data, plagiarism, duplicate publishing, salami slicing, self-citation, simultaneous publication, conflicts of interest, and authorship issues. Attention is drawn to the guidelines framed by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. The authors have given a comprehensive checklist which can be used by the research workers to ensure that there is no academic dishonesty of any sort during publication. Any unethical practice noticed by the editors or brought to their attention can lead to serious consequences ranging from tendering an apology to imprisonment. Key words: publication ethics, academic dishonesty, authorship, plagiarism. Assess need. Out of the many waves of change which are engulfing medical education, one with an immense magnitude is the importance given to medical research. Medical students, though minimally sensitized to research, are not aware of the importance or steps in submission and publication of their research work as a platform to share the knowledge arising out of research activities, however small the contribution might be considered. Just as there are ethical guidelines for conducting research, there are guidelines for sharing the results of the work to a wider audience on printed or electronic media. Breaching the guidelines will amount to academic dishonesty and may lead to retraction of the published work. Hence, researchers need to be aware of the issues involved and ensure that the manuscript proposed to be submitted for publications meets all current ethical guidelines. This chapter will discuss the proper and ethical way of publishing research. Brief. Define publication ethics. List and explain various types of unethical practices in publication. Create awareness of consequences of unethical publication. Provide checklists for authors to avoid unethical issues. Provide links to useful URLs for this purpose. CO and 3XTUARISE. Presented below are some of the glaring examples of unethical publication practices and their consequence. 1. Alfredo Fusco, a cancer researcher at the University of Naples, has, since 2012, been under criminal investigation for fraud, including manipulation of images in his published studies. As of 2020, Fusco has had 22 of his publications retracted and an additional 4 papers corrected. 2. A request by an author to correct one of his papers in 2050 led to an investigation by the journal which led to 19 of his papers being retracted for falsification. 3. Edward Orr and graduate student David Anderson, formerly from the University of Oregon, retracted 9 of their publications due to data fabrication. 4. A former postdoc at the National Institutes of Health committed misconduct in a study of hepatitis by falsely claiming that data from a single trial subject were actually from more than a dozen different people. The knowledge of publication ethics, therefore, is mandatory for all young authors to avoid such unpleasant consequences. Describe. What is publication ethics? It is a set of rules or guidelines to be followed while publishing to enable the researchers to share genuine, authentic data without any fabrication and simultaneously giving due credit to all those and only those concerned with the scientific or scholarly research work. Both the publishers and authors need to follow some basic core practices to win the trust and confidence of the readers. The term publication ethics has been attributed in Psychology Dictionary to one Dr. Haverson, who noticed a remarkable similarity of his earlier work in another article published later. The same author has gone on to define publication ethics as publication ethics are rules of conduct generally agreed upon when publishing results of scientific research or other scholarly work. Generally, it is a standard that protects intellectual property and forbids the republication of another's work without proper credit. It also forbids the use of plagiarism of another's efforts. Data and information published as original must, in fact, the original. There are so many incidents and anecdotes of malpractices, such as stealing another person's work, etc., which have brought disgrace both to the publishers and the authors. In 1997, a group of editors who had experienced publication malpractice had a meeting, and their deliberations led to the formation of the Committee on Publication Ethics to prevent misconducts in publication. The committee was officially registered in the UK in 2007 and is funded by subscription by its members composed of publishers, journal editors, and others involved in academic publication. Guidelines have been laid to define and deal with publication misconduct, types of unethical practices in publication, data manipulation, and research fraud. This refers to research where the original data is altered and fraudulent results or conclusions are published. This is particularly seen in clinical studies. On suspicion, the reviewers can ask for the original datasheet from the researchers. The researchers are generally advised to keep intact the original datasheet for at least 5-10 years after publication of the work for verification, in case there is dispute as to the veracity of the data. Plagiarism. This term refers to one researcher using the work of another researcher without any consent or acknowledgement of the latter's contribution. In other words, it amounts to a theft of intellectual property of one researcher by another. This is a very common form of fraudulent practice observed in practice. There are several types of plagiarism. Clear plagiarism. Here, large portions of the text or data, including tables, figures, are copied verbatim by the researcher and incorporated into her own work. Minor plagiarism. This refers to copying only short phrases or sentences without any misappropriation of data. Accidental plagiarism. When a researcher misquotes the source of information or fails to cite their sources, it is called accidental plagiarism. This is usually unintentional. Using similar phrases or groups of words is also accidental and not intentional. Mosaic plagiarism, when phrases are quoted from another work without using quotation marks, or text is used with synonyms without altering the general structure in parts of the manuscript. It is called patchy or mosaic plagiarism. Self-plagiarism. This describes a situation where the researcher incorporates the contents wholly or in part of her own work published earlier into her new work. Authors might feel that using their own work might be ethical. From a scientific point of view, this amounts to reusing a previously used material to pass off as a new work and is academically dishonest. Examples of a few types of self-plagiarism are duplicating the publication in another journal without informing the publisher or the reader, publishing a large study as a number of smaller studies to increase the number of publications by that author. There are several software packages for checking plagiarism. Some of the popular ones are Plagiaware, Urkund, and Isenticate. The authors should check for plagiarism using one of the recognized software before sending the manuscript for publication. Many journals carry out a rigorous plagiarism check before publishing a manuscript. COPE provides guidelines to check plagiarism when detected either in the review phase or after publication. Authors, before submitting a manuscript, should ensure a thorough check for plagiarism using good commercially available software. The report of these software usually shows the text with highlighted areas which are similar to what is found in other references. It is the responsibility of authors to ensure that they pay particular attention to these highlighted areas and rewrite them, cite sources, or delete them before the paper is submitted. Plagiarism is a legal offense in India with prescribed punishment which may be fine or even imprisonment. Simultaneous submission. When an author submits his manuscript simultaneously to more than one journal at the same time to increase the chances of publication, it is called simultaneous publication. Many journals obtain an undertaking from the author that the manuscript has not been sent to any other journal. The authors should wait for a decision from the editor before sending it to another journal. If there is an inordinate delay in getting a reply from the editor, the corresponding author, with the consent of her co-authors, can withdraw the submission officially and resubmit it to another journal. Presenting a research work in an academic meet or having an abstract published in the conference proceedings does not preclude it from submission for publication in a journal as a full paper. Duplicate publication. When an author uses the same hypothesis, data, discussion points, and conclusions from a previous study and publishes it as a new study, it is duplication. It is different from self-plagiarism in that the same phrases, images, tables are not used. The authors might change the title, change the order of authors, or bring in hidden evidence not used in the previous publication. Authors generally use non-English journals for duplication. Salami slicing. This is another form of duplication wherein the same author from a single study with the same set of data, the same research question and methodology analyze the subgroups separately, or just extends the follow-up period and present it as different result in a new paper. Self-citation. When an author cites his, her own work which is out of context with the current research topic, it is called self-citation. Citation is important for senior researchers as it is the basis for increasing their I and H indices which are important for career advancement. However, citations of one's own work which are relevant to the current research are permissible. Authorship issues. The International Committee of Medical Journal Editors has laid down criteria for authorship of publications. Authorship is important to a researcher because it has academic and to some extent financial implications. The authors are responsible for the content of publication and have to take accountability for their work. Since in many cases the role of co-authors in the research work is not evident, several journals now insist that the contributions of each author towards the research work be disclosed at the time of submission of the manuscript. Criteria for authorship. The ICMJE recommends that authorship be based on 4 criteria. These mandate that the author should have made substantial contribution to 1. The design of the study, acquisition of data, analysis, and interpretation, and 2. Preparing the draft of the manuscript or revising it critically and intellectually contributing, and 3. Approving the final version of the manuscript, and 4. The author should besides take accountability for all aspects of the work in and ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. In addition, the author should also identify co-authors responsible for different parts of the work. The order of authors is determined by the extent of their contribution. It is better to resolve the issues of authorship at the beginning of the study itself. It is possible to change the order of authorship after acceptance or even after publication, provided the co-authors agree and submit a signed no objection form to the editor individually. The corresponding author takes the responsibility of communicating with the journal during manuscript submission, peer review, and publication process. She is responsible for answering the queries raised during peer review and provide clarification or details that are asked for. She should also be available after publication to sort out issues that might arise later. Although the corresponding author is responsible for all issues related to publication, it is advisable to share the correspondence with co-authors also. Non-author contributors, others involved in the research project but who do not fulfill the above said criteria are referred to as non-author contributors. Personnel involved in funding the research work, general supervision of the research work, administrative support, technical support, typing the manuscript, language editing, proofreading, etc. are considered non-author contributors. Though they do not qualify for authorship, they can be acknowledged by the authors mentioning specific nature of their contribution. Ghost authors, they are the authors who have made substantial contribution to the work but are not given authorship. They are usually paid authors or professional writers. They should not be included as authors but may be acknowledged. The other significant type of ghost authorship is to suppress the name of junior contributors, usually postgraduate students, who have contributed substantially to the paper. Several steps have been suggested for curbing the undesirable practice of ghostwriting, and journals should clearly state their approach to ghostwriting in the instructions to authors. We make authors declare the participation of a ghostwriter and their role in the preparation of the manuscript. C. Identify the person or the agency which provided ghostwriting services at the end of the manuscript. Gift authors, authorship is given to persons from the affiliated institute although they have not contributed to the research work. Gift authorship is generally given to a person from the institute in which the research work was carried out and to the heads of the institutions or departments where the research work was carried out. It is an unethical practice to include them as authors if they do not fulfill the ICMJE guidelines. Guest authors, this authorship is given to a person whose inclusion might improve the chances of publication of the manuscript. This again is an unethical publication practice. It is done in a belief that having a senior or a well-known academician as one of the co-authors will influence the weightage given to the paper by the reviewers, editors, or readers and increase the chance of acceptance. Conflict of interest or competing interest. This refers to the fact that the author may have in conducting the research which might directly or indirectly affect the outcome of the research work. Having such conflicting interests is not considered unethical, but failing to disclose it is. Once the COI is disclosed, the readers can judge the work with discretion. COI can be direct or indirect. Direct COI is when the author receives employment, owns stocks, or patents of the product investigated in the research. Indirect COI is when the author receives grant to conduct the study, honoraria, or paid lectures to popularize the product. Retraction. This refers to the act of withdrawing an article after publication from the journal. The decision to withdraw is made by the editors. A notification regarding retraction must be given to the database, and on acceptance of retraction, the article with the author's names will have the word retracted before its title. Sometimes the article can be totally removed from the database. The reasons for retraction must be disclosed by the editors. The general reasons are any fraud or academic dishonesty brought to the notice of the editors after publication. Retraction will be done as soon as the editors are convinced about the unethical issues related to the article. In some situations where the editors are convinced about the validity of the findings of the research work and the dispute is about authorship or conflict of interest, the article might not be retracted. Consequences of breach. What will be the consequence if any of these unethical practices is discovered? COPE has laid down guidelines for solving this misconduct. The editorial board should contact the authors and inform them about the discovery of the misconduct. If the authors accept their fault and apologize, the paper is rejected and the head of the institute is informed. If the paper has already been published, the authors must confess to their guilt, which will be published as an erratum in the journal. If the misconduct is severe and proved, the editor has the right to retract the paper. The authors can be blacklisted by the journal, and the information is shared with COPE so that the same is disseminated to other journals. If the authors deny their misconduct, the editor can take appropriate action as per COPE guidelines. They can also be questioned by the local ethical authorities. Authors should be guided by a checklist to ensure that they have fulfilled all the required norms before submission of the manuscript to a journal. Summarize. Publication ethics refers to the rules and guidelines that are to be followed and practiced when publishing a research work. Academic honesty is essential when the information is to be shared with a larger audience who may incorporate some of the findings and conclusions in their practice. The code of conduct during publication was laid down by the Committee on Publication Ethics founded in 1997 to prevent misconducts in publication. Misconducts associated with publication are falsifying and manipulating the data, plagiarism, duplicate publishing, salami slicing, self-citation, simultaneous publication, conflicts of interest, and authorship issues. Authorship issues include gift authorship, ghost authorship, guest authorship, and non-authorship contribution. Ethical guidelines in giving authorship to an author are laid down by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Research workers are advised to use a checklist to avoid academic dishonesty of any sort during publication. Any unethical practice noticed by the editors or brought to their attention can lead to consequences ranging from tendering an apology to imprisonment. Evaluate 1. What is self-plagiarism? 2. What is the difference between gift and guest authorship? 3. What do you understand by conflicts of interest? Based on the information contained in this chapter, make a list of 5 points which you will consider while writing your next research paper in medical education. Road ahead. Checklist for authors regarding publication ethics before submission. Consulting and conforming to the items on this checklist would go a long way to avoid ethical pitfalls in publishing. Approval for research. 1. Approval from regulatory agencies if required. 2. Mandatory registration of all clinical trials with number. 3. Proper informed consent procedure which is recorded in the manuscript. Data. 1. Accurate. 2. Verifiable. 3. Available for review if required. Plagiarism. 1. Is any part of the work copied from others? 2. Has copyright permission been obtained where required? 3. Has plagiarism check been carried out and corrective measures taken? Submission. 1. Has duplicate submissions been avoided? 2. Has salami slicing been avoided? 3. Has self-citation been employed only where appropriate? Authorship issues. 1. Have authorship been provided to all those who fulfill the norms of COPE and proper sequence? 2. Has ghost, guest, and gift authorship been avoided? 3. Have all authors seen and agreed to the final version of the publication? Conflict of interest. 1. Has conflict of interest issues been discussed clearly with all co-authors and declared in uncertain terms in the paper wherever there is a conflict of interest? Acknowledgements. 1. Has the contribution of all those who have helped in the study but who do not qualify to be authors been acknowledged?